So we have a user model. We have a JPA entity, right, that maps to a relational schema. What we need to be able to do is be able to interact with it, right? We're going to be able to use it to insert, to update, to delete. So basically, we want to create the DAO. The DAO is the one who ultimately interacts with the database, right? So we don't have a DAO. We don't need a DAO. What we'll do is that instead we are going to ask for a generic DAO, right? Which we then could tailor it. If it's not doing exactly what we want, we could tailor it, right? We can make it do what we want. So to do that, the generic DAO is oftentimes referred to as what's called a repository, right? A database repository, and it's an interface that can extend all sorts of different types of repositories that are already pre-configured for us, right? That have a lot of behavior for us, right? Some of them are configured to talk to relational databases. Others are configured to talk to non-relational databases, or configured to talk to XML databases, JSON databases, all sorts of types of data storage, or even the file system, right? Or Excel, or comma separated values, right? So you can have, JPA is pretty powerful. Right? It can talk to any type of resource, and give you an API, right? It's a common API that allows you to insert, update, delete, right, and manipulate the data. We're going to be using a repository that's going to give us a default set of behaviors that allow us to do all the CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete. Basically, the DAO that we have been building earlier. So let's do that. Let's go to the IDE, and here we're going to put all our repositories under a directory called repositories. So repositories. And in this particular case, typically what you'll do is create a repository per data model, right? Or also create a repository per relationship. If you have a review relates a user with a product, right? So some user is reviewing a product, yes. So it creates a relation between the two. So let's create a repository. So this will be an interface, a Java interface. Java interface. No Java interface. Where is it? Okay. Oh, interface. There we go. So this will be a user repository. So this repository is going to extend a CRUD repository, and the CRUD repository is going to behave. It's going to be the equivalent of our DAO, our generic DAO. Right? If it's generic, that means that it needs to be configured. It needs to be customized. It says, what am I talking to? If it's not specifically user or specifically movies or specifically actors, what am I talking to? What table am I talking to? So you configure it, right, by providing the class that you want to CRUD. I want to CRUD users, right? So it takes that as an argument, and also needs the type of the primary key. So what are you using for primary key? Are you using a string, an integer, a float? What are you using? Is it a composite key, right? What is it? It needs to know. In our case, we're using an integer, right? I use a lowercase primitive data type int, but I could have used integer instead, right? Actually, typically I would have used integer anyway. There we go. So that's it. This is what we're going to get here is the default implementation of a CRUD repository, right? It's going to have a find all. It's going to have a create. It's going to have a delete. Right? It's going to have a find by ID. Right? Everything we wrote last week, right? It's already implemented. You don't have to do anything. Right? It's already implemented. You just need to configure it. Yes, right? So again, but you can in here provide additional configuration if you don't like the default implementation. You can override and provide your own, right? And we'll see that in a minute. Right. All right. So how are we going to be using this? So let's see. Right. So we created the user. We have the first name, last name. Let's insert a couple of folks in here. So let me grab this: Alice, Bob, Chuck, and Dan. Let's see. So we have this database, we have this user, and let's copy here. So, oh, I guess we can just paste it in here. We have Alice into user, and I want to make sure it's the name. We might want to have to provide here the columns. So this would be first name. It will be last name. And then we have username. And we have password. Oops. So let's try out this one over here. Let's insert. Oh, users. These are all users, right? Users. There we go. So we have one user. Let's insert a couple more. Let's copy this and put it in here. Oops. All right, we inserted two, and we can query it and see what we got so far. All right, we have those three records in there: Alice, Bob, and Dan. Okay. All right. So what we'd like to be able to do is see if we could retrieve this from our database. Let's do that. All right, so let's see if we can find all the information. Okay. All right, so let's see. Let's create a new test.